Broadcasting from the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, to around the globe. You're listening to Sharkbite Biz, your exclusive place for business strategy, sales, marketing, and tech in the roaring 20s. And now, here's your host, David Strausser.
Welcome to another edition of Sharkbite Biz, and I'm your rockin' host, David Strausser. Today's episode is special. Yes, another special episode for Sharkbite Biz, as we have a super amazing guest today. I'd like to think all episodes are incredible, but this one, truthfully, it's over the top. Truth is that small business owners are creative people. They started a brand and a business from the ground up with only having a dream. During this global pandemic, many businesses and people are suffering, especially if you're in one of those creative businesses and industries like a band and music. You just can't do an event and make your money like you used to. That's where I like to combine my passion of rock music with my passion of small business love and hit two birds with one stone. Today's show is going to discuss what one man, Vander Ark, and you may know him as the lead singer of the rock band, the Verve Pipe, is doing to stay productive and pay the bills during this global crisis. Vander Ark is a lead singer and principal songwriter for the multi-platinum rock band, the Verve Pipe, recognized worldwide for their hits Photograph, Colorful, Never Let You Down, and the number one smash single, The Freshmen. Along with success on radio, TV, and film, sold out concert dates, videos, MTV, and VH1, as well as features in Rolling Stone and more. Brian and the band has also made numerous television appearances, including The Tonight Show and Late Night with David Letterman. Whether solo or with the Verve Pipe, Brian tours throughout North America, including appearances at Lollapalooza, the Austin City Limits Festival, Lincoln Center, Summer Stage in Central Park, and many more. So without further delay, let's bring Brian on in here.
Creative and innovation tips.
Hey, Vander Ark, lead singer of the Verve Pipe, and dare I say, business professional. Welcome to Sharkbite Biz.
Thanks for having me, David.
Oh, no problem. You know, I'm always starstruck when I get to see one of my favorite artists from when I was growing up, being, I think, a senior when the Freshmen came out. So let's start this off with a real softball question for you, okay? For our viewers who maybe only know you as the lead singer of the guy who sings The Freshmen, how about you give us a little bit of background and some of your experience about you?
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm from Michigan. I grew up in Western Michigan. I got my first gig in the Holiday Inn bars when I was 16 years old. And then I joined the Army to gain some experience as a songwriter. And when I got out of the Army, I got my job back at the
Hold on. Sorry. You joined the Army to gain experience as a songwriter?
As a songwriter. You see, you'll understand this when I explain this. I had never traveled anywhere up to that point. I'd never been on a plane up until that point, right? So I'm stuck in Western Michigan. The shackles of the city that, is just spinning its wheels, with very conservative. And I thought, well, if I'm going to, be a singer-songwriter, I'm going to have to get some experience and also a little bit of college money, that kind of thing. So I joined the Army. I didn't have to join for 4 years. I should have went in for 2, but I thought, well, if I'm going to go in, I'm going to go in. And I got out.
For 4 years?
I went for 4 years, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I went over to Europe. I mean, I worked on the border of Czechoslovakia and East Germany back in 1984 when Reagan was in charge and it was still communist over there. And, I in my speaking gigs, I tell some stories about that as well, about that, trying to make a connection with the other side in my own little way as a 19-year-old soldier. And the way I did that was I snuck up to the border one night and put my cigarettes up on the border stone and went back and waited. I went back and I checked out and I went back up to the border stone and the cigarettes were still there. And I did that for probably 6 weeks. And finally I went up there to get my cigarettes back. And I'm like, oh, my cigarettes are still there. And I picked them up and they were Czechoslovakian cigarettes. I was able to make that connection.
That's pretty awesome.
So these are stories. I mean, that's a story, I can write about and that kind of thing. So a long story short, you asked about the history. When I went back to the Holiday Inn gig, I formed a band and called the Verve Pipe, and we sold a couple of independent records on a roll and sold maybe 50,000-60,000 of them, and that's got the attention of RCA Records, and they signed us to a deal.
Yeah, no, that's great. And when you're talking about that deal with RCA Records, I think a lot of people will think, okay, the music industry, yeah, that's an industry, that's business. But
Sure.
I don't think a lot of people, I mean, they don't really think about the business side of bands, of the image, your brand, stuff like that. How do you really view that as a business, Brian Vander Ark, the Verve Pipe?
I'm much better now. Like, I wish I had signed the deal now, because I know a lot more about business and about the business of music, and I would do much better, and I would work closer hand in hand with a label for the common goal of selling a lot of records. There was a lot of resistance for selling out when it was the early 90s.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so we resisted it. We fought with RCA quite a bit about things when we shouldn't have, and that kind of thing. But understanding now that 95% of the bands that record labels signed back then, 95% of those were failures. They make all of their money on the 5% that are successful. So they make so much money on that 5% that it sustains their business. That's their business model, which is crazy to me. So you really had to get the attention of your record label to be able to do anything and get a priority. And we were fortunate. My manager said, look, Atlantic wants you and RCA wants you. RCA doesn't have anybody right now but ZZ Top and a new young kid named Dave Matthews, who nobody knew. And he said, you might want to go with them because you're going to get a lot of priority. And, he was right. God bless him. So we went with that. Yeah, it worked out good.
It did really work out good. But I tell you what, RCA with Dave Matthews, ZZ Top, the Verve Pipe, that's a pretty good lineup right there.
They were pretty good. I mean, actually, when the mid-90s came around and Dave was really taking off.
Oh, yeah.
We did pretty well in 97. And then they signed the Foo Fighters after us.
Yeah.
And then the Foo Fighters got all the attention. And I'm a huge Foo Fighters fan, but this is business.
They took it away from you.
Yeah, they took the priority away. Yeah. It's a bit cutthroat too.
Your career, I guess, put it mildly, you can kind of say maybe it had some ups and downs. But what I really respect, as I found out more about you as an individual, and just the way you've had to change and evolve so that you could still keep doing what you love. It's a really amazing story. Can you tell us about some of those highs and lows and how you've had to evolve your brand just to stay relevant?
Sure. I mean, of course, when we signed with RCA, I was living in a storage unit. In the 90s, bands used to rent out storage units for $100 a month, and you'd store your gear there, but you'd make sure they were powered because you were going to rehearse there. Well, I moved into the storage unit because I got kicked out of our apartment with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
For a number of very good reasons, by the way. But I lived there. So I went from mattress on the floor, squalor, to getting a call from Jerry Harrison of the Talking Heads, who says, you've got to come to San Francisco and live on the houseboats and record your album out here where Metallica's recording right now, and we're recorded Rumors and all this stuff. So then you go and do that, and then you get a call from Gene Simmons, who heard, from Kiss, who heard your, debut album before it came out, and he says, hey, you want to come tour with Kiss? And we're like, oh my God, it's amazing. Which it was not. It was a terrible tour, the worst tour I've been on in my life. We got food every night. Nobody wants to see some local band, when they pay the money to see Kiss.
Actually, I think of the show that Kiss puts on, because they're one of the bands I view. They're more about the show, I think, than the music.
Absolutely. Right? It's the spectacle. And Kiss had been broken up, or not broken up, but they had taken the mask off, and they had different players, but they were going to get all the original players together and put the makeup back on and have the explosions and the whole thing. So we jumped on the chance, and oh man, that was not good for us. But regardless, RCA did a heck of a job with our first single called Photograph, and then we had the Ace Up Our Sleeve, which was a song called The Freshman. That's the most popular song for us. So,
did you know The Freshman was going to be that big of a hit? Did you guys just record it and you're like, hey, this is good, this is going to be famous? Or
I had a pretty good feeling when I wrote the song and I played it. I think that night when I finished it, I played the song that night and I messed up all the lyrics, but I had a few of the lyrics right. Like She Was Touching Her Face, I got right, and For the Life of Me, I Cannot. And after I played it, the first night I ever played it, I had a dozen people come up and say, what was that song about the girl touching her face and the whole thing? And I'm like, oh, there's something here. And so we recorded a demo version of it, and that was on our first Verve Pipe album. And then when we signed with RCA, we stripped that version off to go do a modern rock version of it, which is what we did. So, and that's the song that's the version everybody knows that became a big hit. So
yeah. I mean, with that song, I want to get more into the business side, but I have to ask you about the song, obviously. What really inspired that song, the lyrics, the story behind it? I've read a few things online. I don't know if it's true or not. I figured I'd ask the source himself.
those stories changed over the years. You know, the original story is basically, it was a short story I'd written. I had gone out with a girl for a while, and then my buddy went out with her when we broke up, and then they broke up, and I went out with her again. Well, she gets pregnant. And then she has an abortion, and that's where the truth ends.
Okay.
Right? Neither one of us know who the father is, and the truth ends. I mean, the truth ends there. And then for poetic license, I have her commit suicide, which is it's a very neophyte songwriter thing to do. I'm going to make this really dramatic, and she's going to kill herself. You know, it's one of the things I regret about the lyric is that it didn't have to go that dark.
Yeah,
you got abortion and then you got suicide. I don't know.
It's dark, but it's still it's dark in a beautiful way. It's very, very artistic, and
glad it comes across that way.
Yeah. So with the global pandemic right now, you're in the creative field with your brand, your music. How hard is this pandemic for people like you?
I mean, I can't even express. I mean, it's really hard to I can't undersell how hard it is. Or oversell, I guess, how hard it is. Listen, here's the reality. Last weekend was the first time I played live shows in 4 months, right?
Where'd you play out of it? But
I had to fly to Seattle, and then and then fly to Spokane and do a show out there. And then I had to fly to Chicago to do a show. Now, these are private shows, so there's no kind of barrier between you as an artist and the fan. So as careful as I am, this plane was super safe. The airport's safe. Everybody's wearing masks. You get to a party and people aren't wearing masks and they're not social distancing. And there's alcohol involved. And when alcohol's involved, not on my side, but when alcohol is involved in a crowd, things get really loose.
Yeah. You got liquids flying.
Grabbing microphones and, that kind of thing. And then I got to sing in that mic. So I have to come home then, and I have to quarantine myself. Now, I've quarantined myself now for 5 days down in the basement here in my studio apartment, which is still nice. But I can't, I got to wear a mask when I'm around the kids and the whole thing. That's really difficult enough. Not to mention, merchandise sales, of course, we're not playing live shows, so you're not selling merchandise. Streaming, you get paid 0.00005 cents per stream. I had 4 million streams of The Freshmen in a quarter, and I got a check for $200 for that. I mean, so it's really, there's hardly a way to make money. You have to find a way, and I have been able to find a way again, how to make money and survive. But I can't tell you how bad it really is. Tough. And if it's tough for me, it's a lot tougher for a lot of other Brian.
Definitely. I mean, I saw one of the things that you're doing the other day. I see that you're extremely active on Twitter, and I saw how you have Patreon that you're using with subscriptions. Is this because of the current pandemic?
Absolutely. My wife and I sat down with this when all of the tours got canceled. We lost, we lost most of our income, right?
Right.
I was like, what are we going to do? Well, we can get into our IRA now, we're not going to be penalized. We can pay it back in a couple of years or whatever the laws were. I thought, well, we're not going to qualify for unemployment because at that point, nobody knew what to do when you're a, independent contractor. So I said, well, I'm going to look into this Patreon thing. And then that's what I did, patreon.com/Brian Vander Ark. And what you do is people sign up and they can sign up for as little as $3 a month. I go from $3 tier to $10 tier to $25 tier to $50 tier. And then they get things for that. And I go on there 2 or 3 times a week and post like rare recordings. Or today I just posted a lyric process for this song I wrote for Rockstar called Colorful. And I shows the initial of the idea, where there's just the one line. And then the next day I'm working on another song and I get another germ of an idea. So I put all those up. And it just gives people insight on what's going on for me as an artist, and it's very supportive. So me having about 150 subscribers right now, I mean, that pays the mortgage and then some. I mean, it's terrific.
Yeah,
it's very helpful.
So, first off, I want to mention, people may think, oh, $50 a month, that's high. But I was looking, I mean, there's some really cool value that you even give with that, which is, I believe, the VIP access stuff for the concerts and stuff. So it's not like you're just saying, hey, Brian, you can watch some exclusive videos. No, I mean, you're giving, essentially access to meet with you then at shows too.
That's right. You have to give 100% access to make it work. In my opinion, this is how I could make it work. I'm not, if I was Bono when I was doing that, it would be a little different. But for me,
it'd probably be $1,050 a month.
That's right. That's right, at least. So for me to put myself out there and say, you can have total access to me. I respond to everybody's comments. That's a Patreon, everybody's emails. And they, I sing happy birthdays and call them on their birthday, that kind of set of messages. I do guitar lessons. I do all of this stuff. And they get a priority, always get the priority over Instagram or Twitter messages or even email. I go to the patrons first because they're the ones that are really keeping me afloat right now.
Right. So how long have you had that for? Because you mentioned you have about 150 paid subscribers on that. How long did that take to build up? Was it slow? Did it just kind of all come at once?
I think immediately it was probably 30 or 40. And then, over the course of the last, I think I've been on for almost 3 months now.
Wow.
It's grown. I think I might be at 120, 129, something like that. So not quite 150, but, for instance.
It's okay to overestimate on the show. We're in sales.
Oh, yeah. I'm a terrible salesman. But the fact is like somebody will write me and say, hey, will you listen to some of my demos? And like normally you go, well, my time is valuable. Right.
Yes, it is.
If I listen to everybody's demos, and I wouldn't have enough time to write my own demos. But I offer that in one of the tiers, is that I'll lend you my ear. I produce Verve Pipe records. You can send me up to 6 songs a year, and I'll listen to them, and I'll give my input, and I'll help you rework a lyric to make it work. So all of the things I've been asked to do over the years, I found a way to make it work. So instead of charging somebody for me to listen to their demo, I could charge them $100. Or I get them to sign up for $25 a month, and it's the same thing with all, Adobe subscription services.
Right. Everything's about the SaaS recurring revenue.
Let it slide, and eventually you're going to make more money than you originally would. It's a patience game.
Right. No, and that's really smart because, I mean, you are essentially doing independent consulting.
Exactly.
People were asking you to do that for free, or maybe they pay you to do it before. And now Patreon has allowed you to come out with essentially a SaaS model, a subscription model that you can do that for and make it real standardized too, so that you know what you have to do. You've got to fit within the box. So now, obviously, you have a name. You've had a #1 hit. You have something, to run off of with a Patreon. What about the smaller artists out there, the smaller creative people like you? How do you think they can kind of adjust with the current pandemic to try to bring in some revenue? It's
a great question. It's difficult right now to bring revenue in from any source as a musician. What I tell musicians now is I say, the universe is forcing you to be creative. You have to take this time and create content. You should be creating content every single day, whether it be videos, whether it be, songs, whether it be whatever it is you do. This is how you need to spend your days. Start your own Patreon page and go to your friends and family first, because you're going to have some family members or some friends who are still making a great living, and they're going to help you. And it's not like you asking, can I borrow 10 grand? You're saying, hey, support my effort here to be an artist. You know what I mean? Other than that, there's not a whole lot you can do to actually make money. There are video streaming services where you can get paid as well. But if you're an unknown artist, you're going to get 10, 20 people on there. You can have a virtual tip jar and that kind of thing. Those little things help. But if you're an artist who is trying to make a living as an artist right now, you'd be hard pressed to be able to do that, to actually pay, put food on the table for your kids. Very difficult right now.
So everything you just said essentially just validated this channel and this new podcast for me. Thank you, Brian. And in fact, shameless plug, Sharkbite Biz also has a Patreon account at patreon.com/SharkbiteBiz.
Very good.
Have to throw it out there. I guess, when do you think that you may be doing shows again? Because we're in this weird stage right now. It looked like, hey, things are going to reopen, and now we're going backwards again. I mean, is this kind of scaring you?
What you're saying is very true, that it looks like things are going to happen. We rebooked all of our April tour for July. And then, as you can see, I'm home. So the July got canceled. So we rebooked them for October. October just got canceled. So now we've just decided, look, we're going to take this time, like I said, to be creative, create content, work on my Patreon page, work on new albums and that kind of thing, and go out next year. I'm very hopeful that this whole thing will be over enough where we can go out safely in 2021. But I can't have any kind of expectations beyond that. You can always have goals.
Right.
There's so many goals that are out of your control. And I found that if I have very lofty goals, if I can achieve them with the help of, what's going on in the world, where things aren't continuously batting me down, then I feel great. But if I put those goals up there and I can't do anything and things are happening that are beyond my control, you go into a funk and a depression. Nobody wants that. I'm trying to stay optimistic and trying to create art that isn't all the same I hate my dad songs, of the 90s. You know what I mean? I don't hate my dad.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just the phrase that we use, is that sad songs.
So earlier on, before we started talking about the current condition, one thing that we touched on was your career and your brand and how you had to reinvent yourself to stay relevant.
Right.
Do you want to talk about some of those changes? Because I think, honestly, my take is the changes that you did, a lot of artists would not have done because of their egos.
Yeah.
And that's where I really respect you.
Yeah. You've got to leave your ego at the door. When you're, I'll tell you really briefly, I'll tell you the story. I was down. I married my wife. I was living in an RV and I was traveling around and I was out of money because one of our albums, our big album, failed. And then we went out and we made an album that was going to be amazing. It had the song Colorful. It was in the Rockstar soundtrack. We had another song that was going to be top 10. It had a bullet and the whole thing. And then 9/11 happened. And so I sold everything, bought the RV, went on the road, met my wife, and then realized that I couldn't make money doing this. So because we went and bought a house in 2008, another mistake, again, things that you think, well, that's really under my control or not. I don't know.
Right.
I didn't really understand the real estate market and the bubble that was happening. So then we couldn't pay the mortgage, and I got a call from a fan and she said, hey, well, I wonder if you'd come play my birthday party. And I'm like, I'm kind of a rock star. I don't play birthday parties. There's the ego. And she said, I'll pay you $2,500. And I'm like, what time is that party? So I pack up my guitar and I drive to her house and play at her party. She's got folding chairs out in her living room. It's like a venue. And there are fresh flowers, in the vases. And there's family photos on the walls. And I play for her family and friends and play for an hour. And it was spectacular. And I'm driving home that night. I got a check for $2,500 in one pocket, $500 in merchandise sales in the other pocket. And I'm like, I have 4,000 people on my mailing list and they all have birthdays. That's $10 million. So I had to take that and make it more realistic. But I sent an email out to my fan base and I said, look, it's hard to make it in the music industry. Book me into your home. We'll cut out the middleman. Just come to me directly. Right. No agents, no managers. I'll come into your home. I'll play for an hour. I'll hang out for an hour with you and sign autographs and take pictures and teach your kid how to play some guitar chords or whatever. And I sent the email out, and within 24 hours, I booked 52 shows. I mean, it was a spectacular response that people wanted music in their home. This is back in 2007, where nobody was really doing it yet. Now house concerts are becoming more and more popular.
Innovative. I mean, that's really ahead of the curve. I mean, it's almost like an old school Cameo in a way.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I got the idea originally that you could actually do this and make it fun from the old 60s Playboy channel. Hugh Hefner would do nights or not Playboy night. And you'd have people playing the piano and, there'd be people sitting around and singing along. It was super fun and very cool, that kind of thing. But if you go way back to the 1920s and those old parties where, hey, everybody come to the piano, I'm going to play a song, that kind of thing. You can have music in your home. You don't need the lights. You don't need the sound system. You don't need the reverb and the big effects. It's just a guitar and a guy playing, and it turns out people really, really love that. So that's how I ended up reinventing myself.
Yeah. But another way that you reinvented yourself, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you also started doing like children albums as well too, right?
That's right. Yeah. Well, when streaming took over and we weren't making as much merchandise, I realized as a parent that every time I go to any kind of kids, I've got young kids, so anytime I go to any kind of performance, if I buy one T-shirt for one of my kids, I'm buying T-shirts for all of my kids.
Right.
So, wow, there's something. Let's do a kids album, and we did, and we quadrupled our sales. Our merchandise sales, right. And we even quadrupled our CD sales because kids want to leave with something. You know what I mean? They don't even know what the CD is. Have their parents buy this thing for $10 and we're going to sign it and say hi and take a picture and that whole thing. So that was kind of a lucky thing for us too. That was not planned, but it worked out great.
It's good music. And that's what I was also referring to as far as like with the ego. A lot of bands I'm not doing kids albums. That's a very smart business move. I've listened to the music. My kids love the music, like a bedtime song, I believe, which is almost like, to me, it's kind of like rock ballad-ish. And then you have, I think, a song about what was it, spaghetti and meatballs or something?
Yeah. All the fun things like, why do you call it a hamburger? There's no ham in it, that kind of thing.
But they're actual rock songs, though.
Yeah, they're rock songs. We use all the same instrumentation we do on our regular rock albums. We do 4-part harmonies, we produce it and it sounds like a huge rock song, but they're songs about shenanigans and questions that kids have, but they are a lot of fun. And Sirius XM picked it up. Kids Place Live picked it up and played the heck out of that first record. And not that we thought, well, we got to make another album. So we made a second kids album then, We don't make kids albums anymore. We don't do kids shows anymore. Those are exhausting, but we still do kids songs on occasion.
So do you have a new album then that's coming out?
I've been working on a kids album for 5 years now. It's a conceptual album. It's kind of like Pink Floyd's The Wall, but for kids. So
yes, kids need the trip.
Story, yeah. There's a whole story to it. The songs are a linear story and that whole thing. And it's been my Chinese democracy, if you know that Guns.
Yes, Guns N' Roses, yeah. What about regular adult Verve Pipe?
Oh yeah. We're continuously making albums. We put out an album in 2014, and then we made another album that we put out in 2017, and now we're going to be putting out another album here in a few months. So
that's
to make music, yeah. And this album should come faster if we can get back in the studio together sooner.
If you don't mind, I have 2 non-business questions I want to ask you.
Sure.
Just, I don't know if you can see the wall behind me, but I got a few of my heroes up there from Alice Cooper.
Yep.
I got my Steven Tyler and Joe Perry right over there.
Nice.
Have you worked with Alice, Steven, Joe, any of those?
Oh man. I mean, no, the famous people that I've worked with and been with are guys that aren't really in the music world first. Jeff Daniels, I made an album with Jeff Daniels, the actor.
Yeah.
He's a terrific musician as well. People don't typically know that because he doesn't tour a lot, but we made an album together and make music together. My connection with Alice Cooper is Detroit. My whole life has been in Michigan. Bob Seger and Ted Nugent, all those guys.
Oh yeah.
All those guys for years. And then the newer guys, that come up that are from Michigan as well. So I try to keep with the scene as much, but I've never gone to the Grammy. We weren't nominated for a Grammy, so I haven't been in those situations where I meet those other artists. We were always on the road. We really, until the pandemic happened, we're on the road constantly. So we're playing all the time. We never get to go see other bands or meet other musicians.
Right. No, I get you totally. So I guess the question I'm going to ask you is, what kind of final words of wisdoms do you have for other creatives, not just, people that are artistic in general for this pandemic? Do you have any final words of advice you want to give them?
Perseverance. If this is what you want to do, if you find something, if you find your focus, right? Find out where your storage unit is, where you can focus on something and pursue your passion. That's the most important thing. The benefits for you will come at some point, but to be true to yourself and to be creative and use the right side of your brain and the left side of your brain, the right side being the creative side and the left side being the business side, and making smart decisions, all the while being creative. It's a life that you deserve. But it's a wonderful life, a creative life, and I'm thrilled to be able to do this for a living. And I recommend that people, every day do something a little bit creative, no matter what it is. I have a lot of people, David, that come up to me and they say at these events I do, they say, I've always wanted to play the piano, but but I'm already 50, and by the time I'm any good, I'm going to be 70. And I have to say, look, you're going to be 70 either way. Why not be 70 and know how to play
good at the piano?
Yeah,
no, that's excellent. That's excellent advice. And before we head out, I probably should mention that besides the musical stuff, you also are a professional speaker as well, too.
Yeah, I've been doing the speaking thing now for about 7 years. I've now got Rockstar Reinvention. You can go to rockstarreinvention.com and see a little bit of the story. And we did corporate events until this happened, and now we're doing Zoom events. And it's been fantastic. The Zoom events are really fun because people get the Zoom fatigue.
Right.
And if you're looking at everybody on the screen, it's boring, blah, blah, blah. Well, we do the story. My partner and I do the story. And I play, 4 or 5 songs during it and that kind of thing. It's a whole different experience, but a lot of fun. And so far, it's been going great.
Full disclosure to all our listeners out there, I've had executive luncheon events out there in Los Angeles. The last one I did before relocating to Philadelphia, I actually had Brian as the keynote speaker. We had 125-ish executives, business executives in Los Angeles there. The speech was phenomenal because you work in your music into the speech, right. And then we had a little performance afterwards. People love it. It's very, very, very highly rated. So, Brian, people, how can they get in touch with you? I have an email address here. I'll spell it out because we have our audio listeners on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. It's info@artistinmind.com. Think like Brian was just saying, artist in mind. And then what are the other places that they can find you at?
You can also find me at rockstarreinvention.com, where you can see a little bit of the presentation as well. And you can go to, of course, brianvanderark.com or the vervepipe.com. And or you can go to my Patreon page, which I recommend, patreon.com/brianvanderark. And then you cut out all the middlemen and you can communicate with me directly.
Yes, your agent will love that, I think.
Oh, he's gonna hate this. He's gonna hate this.
We won't tell him. And also, you can go find him on Twitter as well, too. I follow him on Twitter. He's got a lot of great content that he's always pushing, a lot of diverse topics. Love it. So, hey, Brian, thank you so much for coming on here. I hope in a couple months we can hopefully get you back again once the economy starts ramping back up and get your view on how it is for creatives like you.
Well, I appreciate you and the fact that you brought me in to speak to your great group. And I'd love to be back on the road. So when we get back on the road as a band as well, David, please come out and say hey, and we'll take care of you. We'll give you the VIP treatment.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Can't wait till you guys get here to Philly.
Sounds good, man.
Yeah, thanks. Take care.
Take care, buddy.
Wow, I'm speechless. Such a deep discussion with Brian. You know, I really should probably apologize to people, but as such a huge fan of his work, I had to take the opportunity to ask him about some things like the origin of the Freshmen and who else he performed with. But I hope that gave you some insight into where the creativity comes from and also how he pays the bills and operates during this global crisis. Unlike U2, the Rolling Stones, or my personal favorite band, Aerosmith, bands that haven't made it as high as them are suffering just as much as regular small business are during these times. A band and its music is really a full-time position. And if you really think about it, Brian is a small business owner. He is struggling, just like you, me, to pay the bills, keep the lights on. But as you heard, he found some super creative ways to innovate and make the best out of a bad situation and really gives his fans some great perks in return for their support. Ultimately, Brian has made the pivots for his business that were necessary in order to allow him to survive. His creativity, drive, and passion is what allows him, in the face of this global crisis and pandemic, to continue on doing what he loves instead of being forced into another career out of necessity. What pivots have you done in the face of the global pandemic? Leave a comment down below on YouTube. Also, I have to mention, as now this episode kicks off the second month of Sharkbite Biz, we only have about 20% of our viewers that are actually subscribed to the video. Yes, this is a new channel. I get that, but please, if you like the content that I'm producing, the experts that I'm bringing you, do me a favor. Smash that like button, subscribe, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Pandora, or even both, iTunes or TuneIn. Yeah, I don't know why. I think that's funny. Every time I list those two, it's like they have the same exact name, just reversed order, and they do very similar things. But it doesn't matter. Wherever you're at, if you like this information that we have coming from experts and business owners and what they're doing to change, to pivot their business, to be successful during these tough times, please, I'm asking you personally, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment. Let's try to help everybody we can as I take you all on this journey with me. So I guess we'll see you Thursday with our next episode of Sharkbite Biz. As always, it will be a good one with another expert out there. And I guess I'll see you then. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Sharkbite Biz. We hope you got some insightful info from this podcast. Be sure to subscribe to us through your favorite podcast app and visit us on the web at www.sharkbitebiz.com. How has business changed for you in the 20s? Email us at podcast@sharkbitebiz.com so you can join us and share your story.